All right, here we go. Overdrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, and look what we have in studio. Gord Miller is in here for the first time in a long time.
It's been a minute.
It sure has. You've been traveling all over the world?
I've been Canada's guest.
Yes.
Europe's guest. Yeah.
That's right.
Been good.
Do you get like the full red carpet wherever you go? When you're doing a hockey tournament, an international hockey tournament.
No. I will tell you this. My daughter's in L.A. tonight. She's going to Taylor Swift.
You're kidding.
I got her Taylor Swift tickets, but I booked the hotel with my points, my Marriott points.
So those are gone.
No,
the hotels, wherever Taylor Swift goes.
But she got like the fruit basket,
crazy.
But because they think I'm there.
Oh, they think Gord Miller's here, and you're always
not because I'm a big deal, but because I'm a Marriott.
Absolutely.
Like titanium.
You're always constantly on flights, and you're in hotels.
Yeah. So she's living the life of Riley.
Very nice.
With the chocolates, the fruit basket.
So did you get an access code, or did you have to call in a favor for those tickets?
I called in a series of favors.
You got to call in so many favors right now.
The day after I got the tickets, she announced the dates in Toronto.
Really?
And I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it's a scene here in Toronto. Like, now people are openly trolling if they got tickets.
Yes,
they're posting online like, I'm better than you. And the concert is in, again, 16 months.
In November of 24.
November of 24. I went through a similar process because I got my wife tickets that I tagged along. I went to the show. It was a great show.
Where'd you go?
Detroit.
Okay.
And the premise was my wife saying, I don't think she's coming here. I want to go see her. We both turned 40 this summer. I was like, all right, let's go together. So I bought her the tickets. And then, of course, she announces she's coming to Toronto, and not only for a night or two, she's coming for 6 nights.
Yeah.
And yet you can't get tickets. She was here 5 years ago. It didn't sell out. Like last time she was in Canada, and I believe in Toronto, I don't believe it was a sellout to see her.
At the Dome?
Yes.
Really?
I believe she played the Rodgers Center 5 years ago, and it was, it would have been packed probably come showtime, but it was not like I can't find tickets.
So it was her. She turned 18 this year. She graduated high school, so it was a combination gift, for that.
That's pretty nice.
But hey, she says, "Oh, great! Can I take my friend?" I'm like, I'd kind of like to go.
In LA too, man. It looks good.
Yeah, Dad. No, I'm going to take Reese. I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
you're out.
Yeah, there was no chance I was ever invited. So
yeah, I had a moment like that this morning. I had a reflection on my childhood because my dad. My dad's a great guy. He's a legend himself.
And a wonderful guy.
Wonderful guy. Yeah. Sarcastic guy, and a guy like he's always trying to make people laugh.
You don't say.
Yeah, shockingly, that's possibly where I learned a thing or two. And I have 2 sisters that he used to embarrass us without intentionally trying to do it. But he'd, say stuff to friends or coaches or teachers. And when you're a kid, you're like, Dad, enough. It's embarrassing. And I always thought, okay, well, I won't get to that point with my kids. And it happened this morning for the first time. My oldest will be 8 in November. And I made a comment to her friends. I was picking them up to go to camp. So I was driving them to camp this morning. And I made the mistake of calling them campers, which I thought was somewhat innocuous and just trying to be inclusive. All right, campers, let's get going. She did not like that comment. She was very embarrassed, very upset, and she made me know about it. And all I could think of was, man, I was hard on my dad because that's all he would have been saying.
Of course.
Like, it's nothing. Come on, campers. I'm like, what's the problem with that? She was so mad, so embarrassed. I'm like, I think I probably did that like 30 years ago. Yeah. I was probably like, Dad, shut up. Stop that. You're embarrassing me. And he wasn't embarrassing me. And now I realize what he went through, and I'm going through it myself, and it stings. It stings a little bit,
When
Gord.
she's 18.
I'll probably want to go on concerts, and she'll say absolutely not.
She may or may not acknowledge your existence.
I know. I've noticed that.
Your very existence might be just a rumor.
Yeah, that's coming. Yeah. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, Taylor Swift, man, you can't get tickets. Can't happen. Like, everyone's calling in favors. Everyone's, again, 16 months from now. You'd think she was playing tonight.
So the gross domestic product is the measurement of a country's complete economic output. So the United States is the biggest economy in the world by a factor of whatever. She's affecting the U.S. gross domestic product. Like, this tour is actually having a measurable impact.
It's wild.
On the American economy.
Wild.
Like, it's astonishing.
Yeah.
Like you can't. It's hard to get hotel rooms in LA. I can tell you, like it's hard to get hotel rooms in LA.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I had to warn her, like it's going to be a delay to get an Uber. It's going to be a delay to get into a restaurant. It's going to be like it's Los Angeles, man.
Well,
it's like,
that's
one of
it.
the biggest cities in the world.
Exactly. Like they host concerts all the time, and generally it doesn't really show up. Like it's tough to make a ripple in LA.
Yeah.
It's tough to make a ripple in New York. And she made a ripple in New York. She was playing in Jersey, and they were buzzing in New York. Like 6 shows at the Rodgers Center. I've never heard of anything close to that. Like 6 shows, and they're already boosting hotel prices. Like I noticed that. I saw someone post that on Instagram that, you know, the nights in and around the night she's here in November of 24, all the hotels downtown have already boosted their prices. I didn't even think that was possible.
I didn't think that was legal.
I'm not sure it is, but they're going to try it.
I did see.
I know it's legal for them to boost prices for certain times of year. Like that is 100% happening.
I was checking in a hotel one time. I won't say where, Calgary. And behind the desk as I was waiting, the front desk clerk had a sheet in front of him. And it said, if it's snowing, the walk-in rate is this. If it's not snowing, the walk-in rate is that.
Isn't that wild? If people are desperate, you really got to squeeze them.
Let's really
you really got to try to squeeze them.
If they're really jammed up, let's really stick.
Yeah, you really got to squeeze them. Well, that's great. She's going to have a blast. I've seen the show. It's a very good show.
So yeah, so you like
very good show.
I hear it's
and it's not my musical taste necessarily. It's not in my wheelhouse.
You got to say she's a talented artist.
But it's pop culture,
and she's a talented artist. And you know, as you know, daughter fathers, I think she. Although a buddy of mine went to the show with his girlfriend and said, you know, interesting that I sat there for 3 hours and listened to songs about what lousy people boys are.
Yeah, there is a part of that that goes with the program.
Your wife's got to look at you like, yeah,
you are the scum of the earth.
She's right. But I do think, you know, the way she took her music back. You know,
well, now she's making more money on it because she's releasing
it. Exactly.
Yeah, so she knows what she's doing, man. Like you talked about the amount of money that the economy's making. Taylor's making some cash too.
So
she's making a lot of money.
My daughter went in to get her nails done, and there's this thing, like I guess on social media, you paint your nails the color of her album covers.
Okay.
So she went in, she asked for these colors, and they go, "Oh, Taylor Swift."
Yeah.
Like in Toronto.
Oh, it's wild.
Like she's not being like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, you want your nails painted like Taylor Swift?
Oh, believe me, we were like when we were leaving Detroit, I had bought my wife. She had a T-shirt, like a Taylor Swift T-shirt. That again, the amount of swag that they're selling in merch is absurd. And we went into like a Target or something in Detroit, and there was someone like, "Oh, you were there," like asking her if she was at the show the night before. It's wild. And I'm assuming, you know, even though there's so much buzz right now, once it kind of settles down, it'll ramp back up in November of 2024, where the Leafs could be playing right down the road. The Leafs could be you could be calling a game. You're probably going to be calling a game one of those nights, right? Because she's playing Thursday,
there'll be like
Friday.
65,000 people crammed in.
It's right around the Hall of Fame game. It could be the Friday night Hall of Fame game. You could be down there, and Taylor Swift will be down Bremner at the Rodgers Center. Wouldn't that that'll be a scene downtown? That will be a scene downtown.
I'll be taking the subway that night.
I would suggest you probably should. And the Leafs are in the news today. Martin Jones signing a 1-year deal, $875,000.
Insurance.
That's exactly what they had to do.
And you know what?
You got to have a third guy.
It could go in the minors. The 875 can go in the minors.
Yep.
Count. So and you know what? Martin's had his moments, right? He's had flashes in the NHL. So
he's a veteran guy. He's been around for a while.
It's a low risk move. And you know, if Wall were to falter a little bit, he's a legit, you know, NHL. He's legitimately played in the NHL for the last 9-10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, the Joseph Wall story is one that I think will amp up as we get closer to camp. Like, he really made an impact down the stretch and into the playoffs with Murray not being available, and then when Samsonov went down, like him.
I do that, by the way, like every game.
The mix-up Samsonov to Samsonov.
I double clutch on his name because he was Samsonov for so long.
Exactly.
And now he says Samsonov. So I double clutch on that. Like,
I had someone ask me recently, how do you pronounce his name? And I had to take a double, like I was doing a SportsCenter hit or something. And I was like, I say Samsonov. But I understand why you're asking me, because he was Samsonov when he got drafted, when he was in Washington. Yeah. He basically flew up here and decided I'm Samsonov now, which is fine. But
you can't do that, though.
I find that very aggravating.
Once it's in here, you can't.
Yeah.
That wrecks me.
How many names do you think you've said throughout your career? Like if you could, wouldn't that be an amazing
I have every
stat to find
I
out?
have every roster of every game I've ever done, weirdly enough. I couldn't tell you within 1,000 how many games I've done.
Within 1,000.
I don't think I could tell you within 1,000 how many games I've done. I would guess, I did exactly 100 games this year. So I would guess.
Think you've done 3,000 games, 3,500 games?
Yeah, probably in that neighborhood.
Something like that. Well, but you've also done different sports. Like it's not like you've only done hockey.
That's just hockey. I couldn't even begin to tell you baseball, football, basketball.
Right. Yeah, that would be a great statistic to have. How many different names you've pronounced in your career?
Incorrectly.
And I was going to say that. Like, what would you put the number on a percentage that you've incorrectly pronounced?
I think that
you've butchered at any point.
Oh, wow. People say
like 2%, 5%.
One of the most common things I get. The World Junior Championship is amazing. Like, not a week goes by, and I'm talking middle of August. You know, someone say, "Well, ask, how's Canada look for the World Junior this year? What about the World Junior?" People say to me, "How do you get those names right at the World Junior?" And I always say, "You don't know those players. How do you know them right?" Like,
yeah, that's very true.
I get the first crack at them, right? So, So that's what I try to do is, you know, you try to say it the way they would say it, but there are linguistic differences.
Mm-hmm.
There are sounds we don't make in English. So we don't say, for example, we don't say Praha, we say Prague. We don't say Roma, we say Rome.
Right.
But we do try, whenever possible, I will say to a player, how do you want your name pronounced? And what teams have started doing, so we actually asked for this at the World Junior and the World Championship, just give us a recording of the names. So the Leafs are doing it now. A lot of teams are doing it where the player says their own name, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you hear them, so I get a lot of static from Leaf fans because I say Timothy Liljegren.
And that's how he wants it pronounced.
That's how he says it. And in the pronunciation guide tape, that's what he says. And I've talked to him about it. He says Liljegren.
Okay.
Not Liljegren. Liljegren. So every time he touches the puck, I got to slow down.
Yeah, exactly.
Liljegren.
See, I can't say it properly, and I'm not going to, because then I'm going to butcher
Well,
it.
you can.
I probably could over time, but I don't have, I don't say nearly as many names as you do. I don't say it at the same pace, and I don't feel as if I have as much of an obligation to get it right. Every single time.
One of my favorite stories about it is working in Edmonton, and the California Angels AAA team was there, and so the manager's name was Winston, and his last name was Lenas. So in the Angels pronunciation guide, it says his name was Janus, so double L in Spanish is Ja, which I assume was correct. The AAA team had it a different way. So I said to Winston, "Is your name pronounced Janus?" And he said, "Jess."
Okay.
Well, so
that's a good one.
This is not helpful.
No, it's not. That's not going to help you very much.
But the funny thing is, people say to me all the time, "Well, Andrew Cogliano, so he played in the 06 World Junior in Vancouver, and Italians were all over me, right? All over me. It's Cogliano, which in theory, yes, it is.
Sure.
In Italian, it is Cogliano. He says Cogliano.
Right. In Woodbridge, it's Cogliano.
You actually cannot mispronounce your own name.
Right.
If you want to say your name is Hayes,
exactly. Who are you to say it's not?
knock yourself out.
Yeah, that's right.
I will say Hayes.
Sure.
That's if you want to say that. And so, but Italian Canadians went crazy. You're mispronouncing his name.
Right.
Well, you talk to his dad, Carm.
Yeah.
Because
Carm's a great guy.
That's how
Carm will tell you exactly what
I say Cogliano. So
yeah, exactly.
You cannot mispronounce your own name.
No, exactly.
It's your name.
It's your name. But I guess to be fair, if it is a bit of a different way of pronouncing it and the general public is not aware of that, then naturally some people are going to say this doesn't sound correct.
Right. So
that's not your fault, but what are you going to do?
A lot of guys come over, especially Europeans, and don't want to make waves. They don't want to.
Yeah, just call me whatever you're going to call me.
Teemu Selanne, we say that wrong. It's Selanne. In Finland, the accent is always on the first syllable, and it's Selanne.
Wouldn't that be amazing if he changed it now?
In Finland, he's Selanne. When they introduce him, he's Selanne.
He can't be.
He is.
He's Selanne.
No, but I'm telling you, when they honored him in Finland, it's Selanne.
That's so disappointing to hear. That actually is kind of bothersome because Teemu is so famous.
He was.
And Selanne's such a great it's such a great name. It rings so well, scoring 76.
He was 21 years old when he came over.
Yeah.
And you know the Randy Carlyle story. Oh, because he wanted to wear 8.
Oh, okay.
And Randy Carlyle in Winnipeg was wearing 8. And he asked if he could have it. How do you think that went over?
I can't imagine Randy was very receptive of that. Nor should he have been when you think about it. Randy was probably the captain of the team, was he not?
Yeah.
Of course he's not going to give up the number.
Yeah.
Sullivan. How dare you?
So
that's a bold request.
So I think after being turfed by Randy,
you got your Solane.
I'll be Smith if you want.
Yeah, exactly. I hate to break it to you. We're going to call you whatever you want. Well, we got a good show today. We got a great show.
A lot going on. You kind of loaded up. The grappler kind of loaded up.
Yeah.
Today. I appreciate that because, when I host when you're not here, I feel like he doesn't really put a lot of effort.
It's a bit of a mail-in.
But I do. I feel like the Grap. Can I tell the story? I won't tell the story. Can I tell the story, Grap, about who
I'm curious what story you're about to tell here.
Yeah, you. Well, I'm not sure you want to hear this one.
Who did you want this week?
Oh.
Go ahead. Who was it?
He wanted Sid to talk about.
I wanted Sidney Crosby
on
because considering one Gord Miller does actually have some relationship with Sidney Crosby.
Great. But that's what he's supposed to do.
I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Come on, Sid would probably come on. What else is Sid doing right now?
He comes on. We get him on once a year. Right?
You've had him on when you've been hosting before.
But we've had him for you too.
I've never had him on. I have never interviewed Sid.
Really?
That is a bucket list item for me. I'd love to have Sid on. Love to. He's never been on with me. He may have been on this show when I wasn't on. I know you've been on this. I don't know if it was this show or possibly the lunch. I don't remember which one you were hosting. When you've had him, I think you've had him on a couple times when you've been in this chair.
This is news to me.
Yeah,
I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident that both times it was on the lunch and not on Overdrive.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever on this show. You might have had him on OD once.
And on OD once.
I kind of feel like I remember that.
Steph was.
Yeah, I do.
Steph was you, I think.
Feel like I have a recollection of that, but that's going back 4 or 5 years. Anyway, that's the guy you want to hear from right now.
This is a good show today.
Yeah, it is.
I just feel like when I do the show in your stead, which is not very often anymore, but I just feel like he doesn't give me the same effort.
No, I think he gives 100% effort every day.
So?
You win some, you lose some. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes things fall in your lap. Like we got José Bautista on at 5:30.
How about that?
And José's doing the rounds. He's level of excellence this weekend. That's going to be a great scene down at the park because, he was a lock. He might have been a lock after 2010 to get up there. Now, that was only his second season.
Yeah.
But he had 54 home runs. He was such a beast that year. The next year, he went for 40+. I mean, by the end of 16, it was obviously a guarantee that this guy was going to be level of excellence. But
don't you think that his arrival, and obviously, Roy Halladay was great, but the success that came with him really resurrected the Jays because they were kind of a dead letter in Toronto.
He was as much as
I remember going sometimes. There'd be 12,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there have been waves.
I did a game. I broadcast one of their games when they were 35 games out.
Yeah,
near the end of the year.
Yeah, if you went to a game in September where they were on pace for 65 wins, 68 wins, there'd be 12,000 people
even
there.
The summer, some days in the summer,
sometimes
it was sort of a. So I think Encarnacion, him.
Yeah. No, I think he was the face of that team, even though Donaldson was the MVP, and he won it in 15. I think he came second in 16.
But I'm going back like 09.
Yeah.
That sort of.
No, that was the resurrection. In 2010, when he hit 54 home runs, that was a coming alive moment because Halladay had been traded in 09, I believe it was. Yeah. And, Halladay goes to Philly. He did what he did there, throws a perfect game, a no-hitter, goes to the playoffs, immediately settles in as a beast, which you knew was going to happen. And now that was a real line of demarcation. This team is just not good. They have to turn things over. But who can we rely on to possibly lead us where we need to go? And Bautista immediately put a stake in the ground. With what he did in 2010. And then they acquired Edwin pretty quickly after that. And then the Marlins deal and that crazy offseason was in 2012. It quickly went from we're going this way to we believe we can compete. Now, it blew up in their face. Well, without question, the most disappointing season in Blue Jay history.
Yeah, that was the World Series or bust year. Remember, that was the headline of the Toronto Sun was World Series or bust. Opening day was World Series or bust.
I remember having Griff on, and Griff predicted they were going to win 106 games or something that year. He predicted, and he wasn't alone. I'm not just.
That's Richard Griffin.
Richard Griffin was saying Griffin was as connected as it gets and objective and
not a.
No, not a hot take artist for the sake of it. He legitimately was looking at that club and all the moves they had made and thought they were going to win 100 games. And I think they won 76 that year, or maybe 72 that year. It was easily the most disappointing flop
it's weird,
in Blue Jay history.
It's weird that, I was watching last night just when you think they're turning it around with runners in scoring position.
Their bats are so frustrating.
Like Varsho and Springer both strike out with a bases loaded. Baseball is odd because normally when you sign a free agent in baseball or trade for a guy, you know what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. He's going to bat between this and this. All of a sudden, with runners in scoring positions, there's this weird anomaly. It's like it must be bad luck.
It's like it's a combination of that, but I think you're so deep into the season, it has to be partly approach.
I think
it has to be the approach.
I think it starts to weigh on you. Remember Morgan Riley last year? Remember he didn't score like the first 43 games of the year, and he finally scored. Like after 20, 25 games, it starts to become a thing for you.
It is a thing for the team. They have the third worst OPS with runners in scoring position in the league
in baseball.
But
with no one on base, they're
fifth.
Yeah,
like it is an anomaly, but it is staggering how often it comes up when they lose ball games, which seems obvious. Big clutch hitting. I mean, you need it to win games. But they're pitching extremely well. Kikuchi was outstanding again last night.
And they're fielding. Like
defensively, they're very good.
Yeah.
Like
which you didn't expect, right?
No, exactly. Like this was a team. They had watered down their offense. When they moved on from Teoscar, even Gurriel moving on. Gurriel's your classic hot cold hitter, but when he was hot, he'd be red hot for 4 or 5 weeks and really trigger an offense. The expectation was they were going to step back, but not to this extent. Like they don't hit for power. They hit okay for average. They get on base at a decent clip, and when there's no one on base, they're a top 5, top 10 offense in baseball. But with runners in scoring position, they're Oakland, they're Cleveland, they're Detroit. It's terrible.
I do think that and go back to hockey. Sorry for a second, but like with the Leafs, well, this group of Leafs has had almost nothing to do with the last 60, 55 years.
Yep,
they weren't born, and yet. Eventually, you start to wear it. It becomes part of the narrative about whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. It becomes part of the narrative about your team. For years, Chicago Cubs players, right? It became, even though they had nothing to do with 1908,
but the fan base doesn't come and go.
The fan base
and the media doesn't,
and so they keep. So if you're not scoring, if you're not hitting, if you're not whatever, it becomes your narrative. Mm-hmm. And even though you say you're working through it day by day. It's got to be on your mind.
It has to be.
So if George Springer's coming up with runners in scoring position, he can say it's just another at bat. It's got to be on his mind.
Well, Varsho's hitting like 160 or something with runners in scoring position.
Which is what, like half what his career average is?
Yeah, it's so bad. It's expected. You mentioned last night he steps up. At that point, there were 2 outs, bases loaded. You knew it was going to be a black hole. The way he's been approaching the plate all year.
And when Pat Tabler used to step up with the bases loaded, like he was
clutch.
He had so much confidence because he'd had, and he'll tell you, a couple of those hits with the bases loaded were off the end of the bat.
Well, you got to get lucky, right? You do. That's a part of baseball.
There's a lot of luck in
there is, but like you get this deep into the season and your stats, your stats are what they are now. It's no longer a small sample size, right? It doesn't mean it's going to continue for the next 5, 10, 15 years. Right. But in terms of what this club is right now, last night's a great example of that. You get a great outing from Kikuchi. You get quality defensive play. You get shut out by Cleveland every game's a big game now. You're in a race, right? You're chasing a playoff spot.
Houston won last night with
exactly
12 in the ninth.
Yep. Exactly. That was a big comeback for them. They put 4 on the board in the ninth.
17 Yankees yesterday, so only 10 Yankees didn't strike out, and they won 7-1.
Wild.
Won 7-1.
It makes no sense. That's the anomaly of baseball. Like the Shohei Ohtani stats are the most fascinating stats in pro sports when you juxtapose what he does individually with what the team does. Like he had that stat, I think it was over the weekend, where he threw 4 or 5 scoreless innings. He had, I believe, multiple home runs, like multiple hits, multiple RBI, something that's never been done before in the live ball era, and they lost 5-3. It happens all the time. It's like Ohtani's done something we haven't seen happen since 1924. Angels lose 5-4. It's the weirdest thing. And even when Trout's in there, it's even more accentuated because it'll be like Trout went 5 for 5 with 2 home runs. Ohtani threw 7 scoreless and blah, blah, blah.
Struck out 10.
Angels lose 3-2. It's like, how? How did that happen? And it happens because it's not only about one individual guy or multiple guys. All right, so José Bautista in about an hour. Jeff Jackson coming up.
Former Leaf.
I'm going to introduce him as a former Leaf, and I'm going to ask him, is that something you're going to promote on the streets of Edmonton? Is that something you're going to walk around promoting?
I played for Toronto.
Yeah, and he worked for the Leafs too, right? He was in the front office for years. Former agent, the agent of Connor McDavid, and now he's the CEO of hockey operations. So he was negotiating a deal with Ken Holland, and now he's technically Ken Holland's boss. Fascinating situation. So we'll get into that with Jeff. Jeff's coming up in about 5 minutes. I know you want to touch on the Kevin Brown, Baltimore Orioles situation as well. Get your take on that, Gord. You're the perfect guy to ask. So we'll make sure I'll hammer away on every possible angle I have. Yes, you're gonna play the role of John Angelos, literally later in the show. Role play level of concern.
Good for me. So
you're gonna be the owner of Baltimore who made that decision. Gord Miller's in here. I'm Bryan Hayes. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Jeff Jackson will join us here in a moment. Oilers CEO of hockey operations, former agent, former player, former hockey executive, done everything. Former Leaf.
Former Leaf.
Very important to point out. I'm sure in Edmonton that's something that comes up often.
It's funny there because hating Toronto is sort of the thing, right? But the biggest ticket of the year, every year, is the Leaf game.
Leafs in town.
It's huge.
Yep.
It's like, remember that clip of Blake Wheeler, or it was Blake Wheeler, right, in Winnipeg after they beat Toronto? Nothing better than beating the Leafs. Remember that?
Yeah, okay.
That is so, the resentment.
Right.
So what makes it great is that no one's neutral about them, right?
But Leaf fans show up too, though, right?
Well, that's
the amazing thing. Leaf fans are there.
Leaf fans love their team.
Yep.
And the opposition hates them. No one's neutral. No one goes, it's Toronto. I don't care, right? So that's gold, man. That's like the Dallas Cowboys. Right?
Exactly right.
When the Dallas Cowboys are getting clobbered, the TV ratings go up.
It's a good thing.
Right?
Very polarizing.
Like you two.
I love it. I love seeing them lose. It's great. Well, Jeff, I don't know. I guess he's got to be one-sided now, right? Can't be wearing 100%. The Maple Leaf alumni jacket out there.
He played for Quebec too, right?
Yeah, he played for a couple teams. Yeah. All right, here he is, the CEO of hockey operations in Edmonton, Jeff Jackson.
Hey, gentlemen.
How you doing, Jeff? Congrats, man. This is a cool gig. How did this all come about?
I got a call sort of out of the blue sometime just before the draft, and it was, hey, would you be interested in talking about this role? And it kind of went from there. It was more, I had a lot going on, in the agent business before the draft, just like with the teams. You got, you're prepping for the draft. You got free agency. You got unrestricted. You got restricted free agents. I had Alex DeBrincat was a client who was getting traded or wanted to get traded, so I had to, help with that. So there was a lot going on in my professional life that I needed to really focus on and sort through, which I told Daryl and Paul Coffey I needed to get through this. And if you would like to wait, and when I'm done all that, I'll consider it and we'll chat. And that's what happened. And then we picked it up again in kind of mid-July, and pretty quickly, came to a deal. And I joined the Oilers last week, and I'm super excited.
So during that time, you would have been negotiating player contracts with the Oilers. Did you have to recuse yourself from that, or how did that operation work?
No, Dave Gagne was taking care of Evan Bouchard. Dave's always been Evan Bouchard's primary agent, and he was negotiating with Kenny, and I wasn't involved in that. And then I had Connor Brown as a client as a free agent, and I was talking to most teams in the league. At the end of the day, the players make a decision about where they want to go when they're unrestricted. We had lots of discussions with lots of different teams, and the complicating factor with Connor Brown was that he was injured almost all of last year. So I think in a normal course, he would have signed a multi-year deal at a pretty good number, but teams are a little bit wary of a guy who's had an ACL tear and surgery, and the other thing about Connor, because of his circumstance, he was permitted to do this, bonus structure, which doesn't happen in the NHL, only for entry level and for 35 and over. So, we canvassed the league. I was talking to Brownie lots. At the end of the day, he decided that the best opportunity for him to kind of maximize his career going forward was to go to a team that he felt had a chance to win. And because of this bonus structure that we could do, he decided on Edmonton. And it was a pretty easy deal to do, to be honest, just given the nature of the bonus setup.
Jeff, I'm wondering how the conversation with Connor McDavid went. You've been his agent for a long time, and how you sort of went from being his agent to now kind of his boss's boss, and how that relationship works.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it last week in the press conference. Like when I started the discussions with the Oilers, I talked to Connor about it. I let him know that they had reached out, wanted to get his thoughts. We've been together a long time, have a close relationship. He trusts me, I trust him, and given it's the Oilers, I wanted his take on it. He basically said to me, like, I think that you should talk to Daryl, explore it. I think you'd do a great job. And if that's your decision, like, I'm supportive of that. And, sort of that was the basis of the first discussion. And then, we had a couple other discussions, and, ultimately when I told him that I decided I wanted to pursue it, he was like, okay, that's great. Like, now we're on the same team for real. and that's kind of where we're at now.
With Jeff Jackson, the new CEO of hockey operations out in Edmonton. As a former player yourself, Jeff, I mean, obviously you're aware of the inner workings of the room. And like you mentioned your long-term relationship with Connor, where I'm sure you were probably a guy that he could lean on, and a guy that he could call and talk to if he's never really in slumps, but if he was, he could talk to you. He could talk to you about what's happening in the room, and he knew that would be a cone of silence type of situation. I would assume that won't happen anymore, just based on the unwritten rules of the room. What happens in the room stays in the room, and now you're a part of the executive team. Do you see it that way? Do you expect your relationship to change based on him being a player and now you being an executive with the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will change for sure. The agent-player relationship is unique. I can tell you, like, that he never called me and talked to me about, his teammates or complaining about his teammates or anything like that. Like, that's sort of not the way Connor is. We talked a lot about the team, about, his desires, his kind of, thoughts on where they can improve. He's a really smart young man, not just a really great hockey player, and he's very analytical. So we would talk about that sort of thing. I think that part of it won't change because, we have the common goal of trying to make the team better and trying to compete and win. But I'm certainly not going to leverage a relationship to try to find out things that are going on in the room. I respect the players. I respect the sanctity of the relationships that are in there. I was a player myself, and I've worked for a team before. I get all that part of it, and I would never put him in a position to kind of compromise that.
Jeff, as a guy who grew up in Edmonton and worked there, I can tell you that. The psychic trauma that Oiler fans have experienced leads to their worst fear. And it's 3 years away from him being unrestricted free agent. It's a long way off. But Oiler fans even now talk about, is Connor going to stay? And how cognizant are you of that sort of fear in Edmonton?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to keep the core of this team together. There's an amazing core of players and it's headed by Connor and Leon Draisaitl. You've got Darnell Nurse on a long-term deal. You got Zach Hyman, who's an important player. Ekholm's an important player. Nugent Hopkins, all of these guys. Evan Bouchard's moved into that kind of realm. So, to your point about Connor, I think that he loves playing at Edmonton. I know that. He's been embraced by the city. He's had some amazing years there. As long as this team is competing to win the Stanley Cup every year, I think we're in a good position to continue the relationship for a long time. And that's on the players to play well, and that's on us in management to make sure that we're putting the very best group of players together every year. And it's going to, you're going to make changes. You're going to try to improve. You're going to have to get some luck. You're going to have, stay away from injuries. You're going to have to get good goaltending, all that stuff. As long as we're doing that, I think that we're going to be in a position because I know that he loves playing there to keep him long term, but there's no guarantees.
Well, what I find so fascinating about this, Jeff, and your role change here is, you as the representative of Connor McDavid, you would have been approaching any contract that he would step into, probably thinking, how much money can we get? And I think everyone would concede Connor should be the highest paid player in the world. And if contracts were renewed every single year, that's probably exactly what would happen. But now you're going to be on the side of it where you're fighting for a discount because every penny counts. How do you intend on approaching that with him, with others, and how much of an adjustment is that for you in terms of your mentality, looking at the salary cap and salary structures and cap hits on the other side of the table?
Yeah, I think that a lot goes into that analysis on the players' side. Like, yes, the players can go for the most amount of money, and as an agent, you're kind of trained to think that way. That's your job, to try to get, the players the most amount of money. Connor didn't take the most amount of money last time, to be honest, and he could have had more, and he decided not to. He wants to win. Leon wants to win. So if you look at, around the league at teams like Pittsburgh, back when Sid and Evgeny Malkin were winning MVP awards and winning scoring titles and winning Stanley Cups, they took an approach that's what they wanted to do. You've seen it with teams like Boston. It happens. So yes, the players are entitled to try to get the most amount that they can, and I assume that at the end of the day, that the players have to decide, what's more important for them. Will they take a little bit less so that they can have a deeper team to help them win? We'll see. We'll see when we get there. I can't speculate on what those two players or any other guys will do, but that's obviously something that will be part of their thought process then.
So we won't hold you to the 30-year drought because you've only been on the job for like a week, but you're a Canadian, and now you're one of the 7 architects of the Canadian teams that are pursuing a cup, and you're aware of the history. I wonder if you have an opinion on why it's been so difficult. Why a Canadian team has not been able to capture the cup in 30 years.
To be honest, I don't know. I've got 2 teenage boys who they think there's a conspiracy going on, which I laugh about. I think they saw it, on Instagram or Snapchat or somewhere. Yes. But I don't know. It's hard to win Stanley Cups. It really is, and so it's probably just coincidence, to be honest. I think that the playing in Canadian markets is super rewarding, and it's a lot of fun, and the fans are passionate, but it's also like high pressure. I'm not sure how much that plays into it or doesn't play into it, but it's certainly it's a factor. There's lots of analysis in the Canadian markets about the teams on a daily basis. There's lots of talk shows and shows like this that spend a lot of time analyzing the teams in their local market and, kind of breaking things down for fans because that's what they want to hear. But I think all of that contributes to, an atmosphere around the team that is high pressure. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I'm sure that there's some impact on players. Players aren't, they don't live in a bubble, and they hear things, see things, even if they, they're not scrolling around on Twitter all day. They see and hear things. So that may be part of it, but I think also it just might be, coincidence. And hopefully that, in Edmonton we can help end the drought here.
Yeah, well, you guys are knocking on the door. That's no question about that. Well, congrats on the gig, Jeff. It's obviously it's a really, really cool one, and it's going to take you down a different path. But sounds like you're prepared for that. So best of luck with it in the future, and thank you for doing this today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
You got it. There he is, Jeff Jackson, the Edmonton Oilers CEO of hockey operations.
When he walks down the street in his old job, no one says, "Hey, there's Jeff Jackson, player agent or former Leaf." When you're in Edmonton, it's a fishbowl, and it's a small fishbowl.
Yeah.
Like there's nowhere to hide. You go to the grocery store, you put gas in the car, you're like he's going to be a celebrity in Edmonton in no time. He will be everywhere you go. It'll be, hey, how's the team doing?
Yeah.
Tough loss.
What are we thinking? Where are we going?
What's going on goaltending here?
Yeah. No, he's had a pretty fascinating hockey life.
Yeah.
Like Jeff was, he was a part of the World Junior team in '85.
Yeah.
Had a
gold medalist with Wendell Clark.
Yep, there you go. And he had a good tournament. And he's a local guy. He's from Chatham and played in the O. Was a second round pick for the Leafs. Played for the Leafs, the Rangers, the Nordique, the Blackhawks, and an agent. Worked with the Leafs for a number of years, and he's obviously been a really successful agent. And now he comes on, and it's a natural progression. This happens a lot in sports where agents, and again, he has history as a player and as a assistant
Pierre Lacroix,
GM here in Toronto.
Pierre Lacroix, famously,
exactly. But I don't think it's a coincidence whose agent he was. He was Connor McDavid's agent.
Keeping Connor McDavid happy is job one in Edmonton. Now and in the future. Keeping McDavid interested in staying is the number one job there. And people in Edmonton have watched, it's 35 years ago today.
Yeah.
Right?
Literally 35 years ago today, Gretzky got traded.
Yeah. So, that hasn't healed.
Right.
Watching all those years of Messier and Coffey and Curry and Fuhr and Anderson and, all of Ryan Smith. Very few players have ended their careers there. Very few of their great players have ended their career there.
Right. Yeah, that is naturally bothersome for fans. I think it's bothersome for the rest of the country to hear Edmonton complain that the 80s came to an end. It was a pretty good decade.
Yeah.
It worked out pretty well for you. You got Gretzky for free. He didn't enter the draft. That doesn't come up enough. I can't tell you how much that bothers me. That Gretzky was he's sold to the Oilers and then naturally steps in the league. Greatest player ever, didn't have to be drafted. But, he got traded, and that sucked. You got him for free in Edmonton, Gord. Come on. That does not come up enough. It's crazy.
Could have been a Colorado Rocky.
It could have been a Colorado Rocky.
Rob Ramage, first overall.
You ever think they don't complain about that down in Colorado?
Jersey now.
Now Jersey, which Gretzky had comments about. I wonder if that's why he had those comments, because he dodged that bullet. I guess that doesn't come up either. All right, thanks to Jeff Jackson. José Bautista at 5:30. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, José Bautista will join us 5:30. Jays Cleveland tonight. Kevin Gausman on the mound after Yusei Kikuchi pitched a gem last night. He was outstanding last night. He was great last night. There you go, Gord. You all good?
Well, yeah, they pressed the button for me because they don't trust me to do it, and then they didn't press the button.
Childproof.
No, but
they
said to me, do you want to press the button yourself? Because we don't think you can do it.
Right.
Then they didn't press the button.
Well, JP.
It was a one-time deal. We do it to open the show, and that's the only help you get from us.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's my only lifeline? Okay.
It's on.
And you know what? That's probably
hours.
a wise course of action.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be trusted.
Hard Knocks debuted last night. I didn't see it.
Oh, are you not going to? Are you like? What's your Aaron Rodgers? Are you like? Is Aaron Rodgers your ex-girlfriend now? Like,
I'm a bit of a jilted ex. I got to be honest. I think he's going to do well down there. I'm a little bit.
Bug you. When Favre was in Minnesota, how did you feel about that?
I actually didn't feel bad because I was waiting on Rodgers, and Rodgers looked great almost immediately. I think they only won 7 games his first year, but there was an anticipation that they have something here and it's going to be okay. I don't have the same feeling with Jordan Love. I don't know what he's going to be. I'm not selling him down the river. I just want to see what it's going to be like. And Favre went to the Jets first before Minnesota, which softened the blow because he went to New York and the Jets were a mess. When he was in that title game, like he threw that pick against the Saints late.
Yeah.
That should have been the Vikings in the Super Bowl that year. When Breeze and Peyton won, that would have been in 2009, I believe it was.
Yeah.
But listen, Rodgers was a great player. I mean, he was an unbelievable Packer. He won a Super Bowl. They were competitive every year.
You can love the player.
Be good in the
you
Jets.
can love the player and not like the guy.
Yeah, it's not even a personal thing. I didn't like the way he went out because he was a diva. He didn't show up for OTAs. He didn't help the young guys. And now I'm hearing in New York, he's Mr. Teammate. That's kind of a bit of a shot at the Packers. Like the way he went out was so sour and unprofessional. That I take more issue with. What he does with his personal life, I don't care one way or the other. I don't know him personally. I loved him as a player. He was a great player. He is a great player. I think he'll be great in New York.
I think this is very cathartic for you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for this. José Bautista, role play level of concern coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.